Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a science fiction comedy film, Idiocracy. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. Someday in the future, while technologies for mass production are developed at top speed and reach their peak, human civilization, however, evolves in the opposite direction. Facing no competition for food and other resources, people change their mindset towards reproduction gradually. Those elites who get high IQs tend to have fewer kids or even no kids. On the contrary, those with IQs below the average tend to have more kids without any birth control. Such population pattern continues for hundreds of years. Joe works as a librarian at a military base. Labeled as the most average individual in the entire armed forces, he's lucky enough to be chosen to join the first so-called human hibernation project, for the only reason that he lives alone without any family members. Because of that, no one would care for him and hold the army for responsibility, even if the project proves to be a failure sometime in the future. Rita, who's a notorious street prostitute and also has no family member, decides to join the first experiment, believing it's a good way to escape the exploitation by her pimp boyfriend, who would rather give her up in exchange for a legal permit to his procuring business issued by the project chief. Joe and Rita are brought into the hibernation chambers and begin their hibernation journey, originally set to someday of 1 year later. Not long after that, however, the experiment project is suspended, for the business scandal between the project chief and the pimp guy is exposed to the public. Due to the scandal, the chief is arrested, with his hibernation project abandoned. The experiment chambers are just left forgotten since then, while Joe and Rita are buried underground for their long dormancy. Meanwhile, on the ground, humanity is under dramatic change. As the number of uncivilized population surges to its record high, the population average IQ level is on the fall continuously. Ironically, to a point where humans could not produce enough products to support their basic demands. What's more, they don't even know how to get rid of their wastes and trashes, resulting in the piling up of numerous trash mountains in the city. Someday in 2025, a huge trash mountain slide happens and almost crushes the whole city, which ironically happens to unearth the buried hibernation chamber and causes Joe to awaken up in the apartment of the stupid Bob, who's smart enough to figure out a real trespasser and kicks Joe out right away onto the street. Shocked by the modern world full of trashes though, Joe soon realizes that people living in the present speak extremely bad English, probably far more broken than this channel. Joe begins to doubt himself a little bit, however, soon after he learns that his English actually sounds ridiculous to the locals. Still confused a ton by the surroundings, Joe tries to comfort himself from the chaos for some kind of hallucination reason. So he finds his way to a local hospital for a mental health check, but only to get astonished by the insane hospital, where the doctor seems insanely stupid and needs be sent for a mental check instead. While feeling lost by the stupid crowd, he becomes to know from the newspaper that he is in a future world of 500 years later. As he looks through the window, he's shocked again by the totally mess up city. After the health check, Joe is asked to pay the bill. However, upon discovering that Joe bears no mandatory ID barcode on his hand, the doctor triggers the security alarm immediately, attempting to catch such an unbelievably insane patient and report to the government. In a great panic, Joe rushes out of the hospital. When back to the street, rather than a hallucination, Joe realizes the stupids have completely taken over the whole world. People are starving and struggling through the trash, and the economic engine seems to have long since powered off. In the evening, as Joe is searching the auto seller machine for food, the police show up in seconds and take control of him. He's later brought to the local court, presumably a serious place for law and order, which however turns to be a pretty damn good place for verbal and physical abuse on the suspect. In despair of the abusing audience though, Joe gets more desperate to find his defense lawyer is actually the stupid Bob, who just kicked him the other day. Trying hard to defend himself before the stupid jury though, as expected, Joe is sentenced guilty for his behavior. As a routine procedure, Joe is taken to the IQ test before he is later sent into the prison. Where, however, with his slightly smart trick played to the prison guard, Joe easily frees himself and flees out. In the escape, Joe finds the stupid lawyer Bob and asks him whether there is some kind of time machine that can make him travel back to the past. Bob pauses for a while, long enough for him to understand the word time machine, before he finally admits that he may know a thing. Joe further tricks Bob to believe that a time machine is actually the money-making machine, which motivates Bob to use his brain to do him the favor. But at that time they both have to run out of the apartment, as the police approach near and break in. In the following escape, Joe happens to find the street girl Rita on the damned right street, who's just awakened from the dormancy chamber and wandering there, intending to remake her old business with such IQ counter high, but hormone low idiots, but to no avail. With no better place to go, Rita joins them on the run. Joe is spotted out soon by the monitor. What's worse, they have to abandon the car running out of gas and find shelter somewhere else. Before they walk far away, the police approach the car and open fire at it immediately, which cheers up the beholders. Joe and Rita later follow Bob to a building, waiting for the subway. The automatic scanning detects Joe. He insists on going with Rita, but misses the chance to get away with Bob, leading to his being confined by the police. Moments later, instead of being sent back to the prison this time, Joe is taken to the White House instead, where to his surprise, the president gives him a warm welcome and nominates him as the minister. That's because people get to know from his former IQ test that Joe is actually the one with the highest IQs remaining on this planet. He is treated as a savior to this country of fools right now. But in exchange, Joe is demanded to solve the food shortage, seemingly the current most emergent issue burning their ass. With no choice, Joe has to take the mission first, but he never stops his plan to run away. He finds the stupid Bob later, and pushes him to continue his effort in the time machine. He also finds the street girl Rita from the street, and holds a secret talk with her in a research field. He instructs Rita to locate the time machine, with a roadmap given by Bob, but only finds that it's a stupid roadmap, impossible for people with average IQ to read. Because of that, they have to give up the escape plan. On their way back from the research mission, however, Joe happens to find the vegetables are actually watered with soft drinks, which would definitely impede the growth of plants. To Joe's shock, the soft drinks have been sold everywhere as pure water for all industries, due to the lobby of the monopoly company, who has bought off the government officials, and even the reporters. Joe proposes that the plant shall be grown with pure water, but gets refused by all other stupid ministers, who are smart enough to figure out pure water is not their taste. Joe then changes his strategy by lying that he can actually talk to the plants, and the plants beg humans for fresh water. In that way, Joe gets his proposal approved immediately. Not long after that, however, such a proposal causes the soft drink company to suffer a great loss, and a huge drop of its stock price in the stock market, which in return makes half of its employees lose their jobs. The rampaging demonstrators soon surround the White House. Under huge pressure, the president has to send Joe to prison, believing that he's a liar. Joe is later sent to the public arena as a punishment. All other racers, war with low IQs though, are well armed with powerful weapons and deadly monsters. In contrast, Joe is given only a shabby car. Despite that, he manages to beat them down with his high IQs. The following rival is a stupid but tough guy, holding a more powerful weapon. Without any weapons to fight back, Joe has to run and hide, while trying to make the audience believe what he did is right, but to no avail. Fortunately, at the critical moment, the fighting is interrupted by a live stream on the big screen, which shows some vegetable seeds start to sprout out of the dirt. It's shown that the live stream is made by Rita and Bob, who pay a camera guy to film the sprouts, and distract the broadcasting guy away with hormones, allowing her to connect the live stream successfully to the big screen. Upon seeing the green sprouts, the whole silent audience become to exclaim and applaud for Joe and his success. The excited president announces to free Joe right away, and decides to promote him to be the deputy president. Joe, however, still hopes to travel back to his world with the time machine. But eventually, he decides to settle down with Rita in such a world of fools, after he's desperate to know that the time machine found by the stupid Bob at last is actually an amusement park named Time Machine. At the end of the story, Joe, as the man with highest IQs on this planet, solves many fundamental survival issues for all the stupid citizens. Later he becomes the President of the United States, and forms a family with the street girl Rita, who gives birth to 3 kids with the highest IQs. In contrast, the stupid lawyer Bob forms his family later. But like many other stupid peers, he mass produces 32 kids, to be worse, all with the lowest IQs. Seemingly conveying a message that nothing on this planet will be changed in the future. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Bye.